Let me create a new pipeline. The activity name is validation activity. All right. So basically, what is this validation activity? Validation activity is something like, um, suppose you can use this particular validation activity in a pipeline to ensure that pipeline only continues execution once it has okay. So let me tell you in another way. So basically, when do you use this validation activity? Actually, this particular activity, right, it is used to check or validate the status if the files are present or not. Okay, so using this we can check or validate status if files are present. Basically, using your validation activity, what can be achieved? We can just using this particular validation activity, we can point to a particular data set. So that data set will actually be pointing to some, be it some folder, it will be pointing to some folder, and using that, right, we can actually check the status, okay, if the files are present or not in that particular folder. So till how much you can do it? So till either till the file is present, till the timeout. Okay, so basically we'll be having something called as a timeout. So if you specify timeout as 30 minutes, so till that 30 minutes it will be checking. Okay, it will check for 30 minutes. If the files are present, then it will return true. If the files are not present, then it will return false. Okay, so basically that is about your validation activity. It is actually used to check the status if the files are present or not. So till when it will find, it will check till the timeout. So you will actually be providing some timeout. So based on that timeout, it will tell you the status. Okay, if the files are present or not. If present, what do you want to do? After that, you just want to perform some copy activity or some other activity. If the files are not present, then in my case, I want to hard code some value and send that value. Okay, so I will be telling you how to make use of your validation activity. So for that, let us quickly go to the validation activity. Here, let me create a new data set. As this is the first time I'm creating a data set in this account. In the service I've already created, let me use that. Okay, there are no folders, right? Blob. I need to create input folder, input container, and output container. Let me create an input container. And let me quickly create output container as well. Let me upload few files. All right. So now in my input container, I have three different files. Two are in CSV and the third one is in Parquet. All right. So let me just click on OK here. So this is your data set, right? You are already aware of how to create a data set. Inside that, you will have to browse your linked service. Okay. So after that is done, here I have not browsed the folder. Did I? Okay. Let me browse it and put it. Let me go back. Okay, so here you have two different options. Okay, these are the three options which are available inside your validation activity. So basically using this validation, what are you trying to do here? I have told you, right? So actually what will happen means here the maximum amount of time which is specified is 7 days. Okay, this is days, hours, minutes and seconds. Days, hours, minutes and seconds. So you can just specify till how much ever time you want this to be active, right? Let me just give something called as 20 minutes. And let it sleep for like 120 seconds. 120 will be a little big because it is a testing. So let me wait for 10 seconds, 30 seconds. Okay. So basically here you will have to specify the time wherein you want your particular, this validation activity is there, right? So this validation activity, what it will do, it will keep on checking a particular folder. So the folder is present inside this DS. So it will keep on checking that folder. So for how much time it will keep on checking? It will check for 20 minutes. Okay. Because the timeout which you have given is 20 minutes. So if you see here, the default value which is specified is 7 days, which I have removed it, and I have just given some 20 minutes of time, and the format is date, hours, minutes and seconds. Okay. So for this, in this particular validation activity, it will work on a folder. So here what are you trying to do? You are trying to check if the files are present inside the folder or not. So till when do you want to check that? Till the timeout. So what is the timeout here? I have specified 20 minutes. Okay, for 20 minutes it will just check for every 20 minutes. Okay, for the first 20 minutes it will check. If the files are not present, what it will give? It will return as false. Okay, if the files are present, then based on the condition you choose here, right, based on that the output will be generated. Okay, so here I do not want to keep on checking it for every 20 minutes. So here what do I want? I want my validation activity to wait for 30 seconds. Okay, to sleep for 30 seconds. Initially it will sleep for 30 seconds, and then it will try to go to that particular folder and see if there are any files or not. Okay, for the first time there are no files present. It will check for 30 seconds, and then what it will do? It will return false. After that, what it will do? It will sleep for 30 seconds, and then again it will go to the folder and it will check. Again, if the files are not present, it will come back. It will return false, and it will sleep for 30 seconds. So like that, it will sleep for 30 seconds, 30 seconds, 30 seconds till this timeout has reached. Once this timeout has reached, what happens? If there are any files, it will display those files. If there are no files, it will return false. Okay, so based on that, right, if there are any files, you can perform some copy activity. Okay, if there are no files, if you can just write some condition here. So based on that, if there are no files present, suppose this will either return true or false. So if it returns true, you can just give it to a for each activity, and inside that for each you can give a copy activity. Suppose this is returning false. Okay, if this is returning false, I want some other variable to be set. Okay, so how to do that also I'll tell you. For now, just understand that validation activity will actually check or validate the status if the files are present or not, in the folder which you are trying to pass. So till when it will try to fetch? Till the timeout period. If you are giving it as 1 day, so for that particular 1 day, it will be checking. If you give 1 hour, it will check for that 1 hour. So this time, this sleep time, right? So this sleep time will actually depend on you. Like I have just given it as 30 seconds. But if you want, you can, if you want, you can just display this as 1 day, or few hours you can specify, and in that you can just give this accordingly. Like if you feel like for every 10 minutes, if you want your activity to keep on checking into that folder, you can also, according to that particular requirement, you can just specify the sleep time here and the timeout. Okay, all right, so that is one thing which you'll have to consider. And what else we have? We have something called as child items. Okay. Basically, what is this child items? Child items means using this validation activity, right? So let me just validate it and show you, and then I'll tell you the difference. Okay. So here what have I chosen? I have just given validation activity, right? Validation activity child items as ignore. Initially it will sleep for 30 seconds, and then it will hit that particular folder. Okay. So 30 seconds are done. So let me just quickly check here. What was the option which I have chosen? Let me write it here. Chosen as ignore. So when you use child items as ignore, what is it giving? So for the first time, it will go and check to that particular folder. Yes, so actually I have few files available in that folder, right? So see here, initially the sleep timeout is 30 seconds. Okay, when I'm executing it for the first time, what it will do? It will sleep for 30 seconds, and it will then go and check if there are any files present in the folder. Actually, I have few files present in the folder. So that is why it is giving me exist as true. Okay, let me just copy this also for you. What is it giving? It gave me exists as true. Okay, that is when you are choosing your child items as ignore category. If you choose your child items as some other category, let me tell you each and everything. Here, let me tell you if it is true. Let me go back to the validation activity. Now let me just try to change this as true here. So ignore, what will this ignore actually do? It will check if the folder exists or not. If the folder is existing, it will actually return just true. Okay, so coming to this true option, what does this do? It will actually go to the folder and check if there are any files or not. If there are any files, it will return true, and along with that it will return what all the files are present, right? That also it will return. Okay, so let me execute that and tell you, it will be clear. So in a pipeline, right, this activity could be a first activity. So based on this, only if the files are present, after that only you can give it to a get metadata activity. After that, a for each activity. Inside a for each, you can use copy activity, and then you can do it. That is for success if there are files present. If there are no files present, then you can give to another path, and then it will act accordingly. If there are no files, what do you want to do? That also I'll tell you. So what is the child items option I have chosen here? I have chosen child items as true. So for the first 30 seconds, it will wait, and after that, it will try to fetch. Okay, so that means it went to the folder and it is returning me true. Now let us see here, did we get the files or not? So if you see here, it is actually returning me true along with the child items files. Okay, it is actually returning true along with child items. Along with all files present. Got it? Child items true means what? If you are making use of this particular child items option, what it will do? It will actually go to the folder and check if there are any files or not. If the files are existing, it will return it as true. And not only that, it will also return what all are the items are present, right? What all are the items? Let me call it as items. Okay. What all are the items present inside that particular folder? Those will be displayed. Okay, clear? Clear, guys? Till here? Let me show you the other one also, which is false category. So basically what does this false return? It will actually only check if the folder exists or not, and if it is empty. Okay, let me execute this also and tell you. Okay, so it is still in progress. It will actually wait for 30 seconds, and then if you keep on refreshing, the time will be updated. Here you will get something called as timeout option.
మ్యామ్
Hmm?
స్క్రీన్ స్ట్రక్ అవుతే ఒక పేజ్లోనే ఉంటుంది. ఇది నాకు మాత్రమే ఇష్యూ ఉందా? అందరికీ ఒకే విధంగా ఇష్యూ ఉందా? సపోజ్
Is
మీరు ఒక స్క్రీన్ నుంచి ఇంకో screen-
is this the same for everybody? Is your screen getting stuck, guys?
No, ma'am.
No, right? Please rejoin now. It is
ఓకే మ్యామ్.
issue with your network. Please rejoin.
ఓకే ఫైన్.
Okay, let me just do one thing. Let me quickly go back and change the time here, because till that time it will keep on trying. Okay, let me just give 1 minute here, and here the sleep time is 10 seconds. Here the option is false. Let me quickly okay, cancel it first. Do that. So it will check till one minute, whatever time you have specified, it will check till that time, and it will tell you that, it will actually tell you timeout has happened. That thing will be displayed here. Let us wait for 1 minute. Okay, so if you see here, what is it telling? So it will actually till the time you have provided, right? So till that time it will keep on checking. Okay, till that time, so I have specified 1 minute. So till that particular 1 minute, it will keep on checking, and it will actually see if there are any files are present or not. So if you see here, it actually found out few files. So that is why we are able to see this true option. Okay, so here, until unless the timeout is not completed, it will not return you the files. So if you see here, it has waited for this complete entire 1 minute of duration, and after that only, if there are any files, it is actually displaying me those files. Okay, it is unlike your true option. So basically, exist is true. If the exist is true, in the first 30 seconds itself, it will check and it will tell you, okay, so for the first 30 seconds itself, I have found out that there are files, so it will actually return me those files. So what does this false option does? Child items as false option, it will actually wait till the timeout has happened. Okay, after the timeout is completed, only then it will actually give us if the files are present or not. It will return true. If the files are present, it will give you the files. All right, is it clear? Let me write that also here so that it will be clear for you. Files. What is the difference between this and this? It will wait only after the result will be displayed. Is it clear? Anybody, any doubts? Let me know. Anybody, any doubts, guys? So based on the option you are choosing, right, based on the child items category you are using, so based on that, it will actually give you the values. If you are choosing child items as ignore, then what it will do, you are actually ignoring the child items. Child items is nothing but files. So if you make use of this child items as ignore, it will only return if the folder is present or not. If the folder is present, it will actually return you true. Okay, child items as true means what? In the initially in the first sleep period itself, it will tell you that okay, the files are existing. It will return true. Since you are choosing child items as true, it will actually give you the result also. Okay, so if you are choosing this child items as false, what it will do actually? It will check until the timeout period has finished. So once the timeout finished, once the sleep period was finished, once the timeout was finished, what it will do, it will wait till the timeout was finished, and only after that, if there are any files, it will display. If there are no files, it will return false. Okay, I just hope it's clear. If it is not clear, let me know.
Ma'am, and the sleep time we are giving just a number, right? But the timeout
That
time we
is
have hours or
yes,
minutes
yes.
and something
So
like, right?
sleep time is just, I want my my particular activity to just be like that. Don't do anything. Just wait till this particular time was finished. So actually, you can just give this as a big number. Okay. So if you just give it for 30 seconds, what will happen? For the first 30 seconds, it will sleep, and then it will trigger it. It will trigger the activity, and what does this activity do? It will go to the folder and it will check. If you give this as 10 seconds, that means for every 10 seconds it will keep on polling. Okay, so the bigger number you give here, the better it would be, so that your activity will not perform anything. It will be idle for some time. If you are sure that your particular activity, so for 30 minutes, after 30 minutes you might be expecting files in the folder. So then at that time, what you can do, you can just specify the timeout as like 1 day or something, and here you can just specify like 30 minutes or 25 minutes. Based on that you can just specify. Okay.
In the sleep time, you just given it in the seconds only, right, ma'am? How
Yeah,
can we
here
keep it
it
at a
is
minute and hour?
seconds only. If it is minutes, you'll have to multiply and write it.
Okay, so if we wanna give the hours also, we have to multiply the seconds with like that. We have to give big number, right?
Yeah, yeah. It will be a
Okay.
little bigger number. So based on that, you can specify. All right.
Okay.
So let me publish it. So after that, which activity we have? I have something called as control execute. Okay, okay. 1 minute. So after this, right? Let me tell you this validation activity. Here only, I'll try to explain you the control flows also. Control flows means what? So basically control flows are something like if a particular activity is successful, then you want some other activities to be executed. If the particular activity is failed, then you want something else to be actually executed. So how can you give that? If you observe here, let me just give something called as, just try to understand the concept here, okay? And after that, let me give some set variable activity. Okay, so here on success, if this particular activity, if I'm giving something and if I'm able to get the files which are present in a folder as true, and if I'm also getting the files, then what do I want to do? Actually, you will have to specify the for each activity here, okay? Because we are getting a number of files, right? You can just use a copy for each activity, and inside that you can use a copy activity. So for understanding purpose, I'm just giving it. So on success, this green line is there, right? This is nothing but a control flow. From this activity to this activity, if you want your control to move from first activity to second activity, you will make use of control flows. So what are these control flows and how many types we have? Control flows are nothing but if you want to, in sequential order or in parallel order, if you want to give the control from one activity to another activity, if you want to decide the flow of your execution, you will basically go with your control flows. So we have different kinds of control flows: success, failure, completion, and skipped. So I have just told you, right? If this particular activity is successful, then go to this activity. If this activity is returning me false, okay, then I want to go to some other activity. So how can I do that? I can just make use of a failure activity here. Failure control flow is there, right? If this particular activity returns true, then I want it to copy. If this returns false, I want it to do something else. Okay. So as I want this to be very simple, so I just specified something called as a set variable activity. So what does this set variable activity actually mean? So let me just tell you about that set variable activity. So if you see here, are you able to get any variable? No. Why is that? That is because we have not created any variable in the pipeline level. So let me first create a set variable, some variable name as file something string default value, and let me just browse that particular name here. This is nothing but my variable, and if you want, you can just pass your hard coded value. So here you can say that no files are present. Just provide any value. So you can either pass it statistically, this is a static value or a hard coded value. If you want, you can also based on any functions, if you want to get that value, right, you can also do it dynamically. Okay, based on the requirement you can go here. So here just try to understand. So what is your first activity is doing? It is actually, it will either return me true or false. So what happens if it returns false? If it returns false, I want that particular activity to give the control to the next activity. So inside this activity, I'm just trying to perform something else. Like I'm just creating a variable and I'm just passing that variable. Okay, for this variable, I'm passing this value. What is that I'm passing? I just want to tell that if this activity returns failed, then I want to go to this activity and I want to return the information as no files are present. Okay, no files are present in the folder. This is the message which it will be displayed if there are no files in the folder. If there are any files in the folder, what it will do? It will go to your this activity, and based on your requirement, if you want to copy it from one location to another location, based on that you will be giving. Okay. So that is about your control flow failure. On success, green line means success. On success, it will go to your first activity. On failure, it will go to the red line. Okay. And what else we have here? We have something called as a skipped also we have. Let me just use something else, or else you can even use a copy or anything, or a wait activity or whatever. On skipped. Okay. There might be few cases wherein you want to skip execution of a particular activity. So at that time you can just make use of this skipped wala line is there, right? This skipped wala line, so that you can use it. Okay, sometimes you do not want your activity to perform, so sometimes based on the requirement, right, you want to skip few activities, so at that time you can go with the skipped line. Okay, suppose when you think that there might be any error and this might yield you a error, so at that time you can just make use of this particular skipped line and you can skip that particular activity. So just try to understand that there are different kinds of control flows. So on success, so based on the activity, if you are getting something, if you are getting some information, so based on that, if you want to go to if you want to give the control to another activity upon success, you can do that. So basically whatever in output you are getting here, right, so based on that, if you want to perform some copy activity, you can use this green line which is success, and then this activity will get executed. If you feel like this activity might result in failure, so at that time you can give it to a failure control flow, and then you can just set some other value here. So based on the requirement, whatever you want, you can just do it. So suppose if this activity is failing, if you feel like this activity will fail, so here also you can use some activity called as a web activity, or else some email triggering, or whatever you want, you can also achieve that. Okay. So if this particular activity, if you feel like you need to skip few steps, then also after timeout, you can just provide this particular skip the line, and then you can just give any particular activity which you want. Okay, so basically we have four different control flows, and what is the other one? We have something called as completion. Success is different, failure is different, completion and skip, each one is different. Okay, so each one is having one purpose. So based on the information which you are getting in the previous activity, so based on that, you will be actually using the particular lines here, control flows, and based on that, you will be going forward. Okay, so that is about control flow. And let me also tell you something else. Let me just try to close all the unmodified tabs. So now inside the control flows, I will tell you the sequence. Okay, PL underscore control. Let me take a copy activity first. After that, let me take a wait activity. Here, understand what the control flow is, okay, and not what activity I'm using. Just try to focus on the the control flows which I'm trying to explain. Okay, so now initially I'll tell you how to run an activity. So I have built a pipeline. Okay, I have built a pipeline. So basically, this is nothing but auto aligning. If you want to align your pipeline in a good fashion, you can just make use of this. Okay, all right. So here, just try to understand the concept here. So this is my parallel. Here, if you see here, I have multiple activities here. Okay, all these activities are getting connected to a single activity, which is this activity. So after that, it will go to this activity, and after that, it will go to this activity. So here, this is called as parallel. So the activities are present in parallel here. Inside my parallel activity, I have three activities: copy data, wait activity, and get metadata activity. So actually here, what am I doing? Suppose if your particular activity. Okay, so if you sometimes there might be few scenarios wherein these three might be evaluated. Okay, this activity might be actually this might be successful. This might be successful. This might be successful. Okay, so if all the three activities are successful, what will happen? It will give the control to your next activity. Okay, if this is true, this is true, this is resulting in true, then what it will happen? It will give the output to this particular wait activity. Okay, so suppose if your first activity is returning true, then what it will do? It will go to your wait activity. If this is also successful, it will go to the next activity and next activity. Okay, if this activity is true, then this will get executed, this and this, all the three will be executed. If this is successful, these all, if this will be executed, this will be executed. If it is success, after that this will be executed. Suppose what if this particular activity fails? Okay, if this particular activity fails, what will happen? Since it if this particular activity fails, what will happen? This will get executed. Okay, so if this is incorrect, okay, if this is failing here, no problem. So you can go to this particular activity. Okay, this particular activity will get executed. If this is true, this one will be executed. If this is fine, this will be executed, and this. Okay, so inside your parallel activities, if any of the particular activity fails, okay, if any of the particular activity fails, what will happen? There will not be any kind of disturbance. Okay, if this fails or this fails, if this is successful, since the control we are giving here, it will actually go to your activity. This will execute, this will execute, and this will execute. This is inside your parallel. If any of the activities fail, no problem. Whatever activity is successful, that will be executed. Okay, suppose just imagine that this activity has failed. Okay, this activity has failed. Suppose this is successful, but this has failed. Since if this is failed, you cannot go further, right? If this is failed, you cannot go further. Okay, if these activity all if these activities are returning you true also, if these are successful also, if this particular activity is failing, then it will not go to this activity, and there is no point of going to this activity. Okay, this is nothing but these are in sequence, right? Suppose if this is true, this is true, but this is false. Okay, if this is false, till here your pipeline gets executed, here the connection will be broken, and it will never go to this activity. Okay, so these three are there, right? These three activities are in sequential, and these three activities are in parallel. Okay, suppose if your this activity is true, this is false, then this will not be executed. That is in sequence. Here you have three activities. If this activity is false, if this activity is false, this flow will be broken, but then you have other two flows, right? If this is not working, this might work. If this is working, then the control will go like this, from here, from here, from here, like that. Just try to understand. Sequential means if you are trying to achieve it in sequential fashion. Okay, if you are trying to achieve it in sequential fashion, if you have activities one after the other, one after the other, if one thing broken, okay, if this particular activity fails, then whatever activities are present after this, the chain of activities will fail. That is in your sequential control flows. If it is in the parallel control flows, if any of the activities if any of the activities fail also, if one activity is successful, then it will take the path. Okay, if these are failing also, that doesn't matter. Why? Because each activity is an independent activity in your parallel case, whereas in sequential case, one activity's output will be dependent on other activities input, right? So that is why if this fails, this will fail, this will fail. If this fails, the control will not go here only, it will be skipped. Okay, so if this fails, this fails, this fails, then there is no point of obviously going forward, right? If any of this returns success, only then it will go, it will consider. Okay, so just try to understand that. All right, is it fine? Were you able to understand this? If you are trying to do it in the parallel fashion, what will happen? Suppose if your copy activity, if you see here, if this activity got successful, if the second activity is successful, and if the third activity is also successful, what will happen? Your wait will execute, your set variable will execute, your web activity will execute. Suppose if your wait activity false, what happens? If your wait activity is false, this is true and this is false. Okay, only this is false, this is false, and only this is true. What will happen? This all will get executed. Okay, if this is false and these two are true, what will happen? Those particular activities will be executed. Coming to this sequential, right? If any of the particular activity, suppose if these all are yielding true, if this is also true, if your first activity is also true, okay, if this activity is also true, then it will go here and it will go here. If there is any breakage in between your sequential activity, then what will happen? That will not get executed. Okay, let me tell you one other scenario wherein inside your sequential activity, if you are giving one after the other, one after the other, just assume that this part is not there. Okay, these three activities which are in parallel, right? Let me just remove the So just imagine now these three activities are not there. You only have these three activities. Okay. So if this is successful, what will happen? This will be executed. This will be executed. If this is failed, what will happen? It will not go here. It will not go here. Okay. If this is successful and this is successful, this also, if there is another activity, okay, if there is any other activity after this web activity, if this is successful, this is successful, this is failed, what will happen? In the sequence, whatever activity is present, that will not get executed. Is it clear, guys? Were you able to understand this concept? It is just that in the sequential, if anywhere, if any particular activity fails, whatever activity is present in the sequence, the chain will be broken. It will not get executed. But that is not the case with your copy activity. Sorry, that is not the case with your parallel activities. If you have any activities in parallel, and if out of three activities, if only one is successful, then in that one successful path only it will get executed. Okay, it will not hinder the control flows, because here you are not considering sequential, because these are parallel, right? So if one activity or two activities fails also, that is not an issue. So whatever activity is successful, it will take that path and it will get executed. All right. So this is about control flows.
Ma'am, can we have a just small example on this parallel and sequential so that we will get in a clarity more than?
So here in the previous one, I have told you regarding this pipeline, this one, right?
Yeah, validation.
Yeah. So here you can just, in the first case, you can just make use of a copy activity. Okay. You can just make use of that particular copy activity. If it is successful, you can give to that particular activity. If it is failed, you can give it to another activity. So that is one case wherein you can use. And after this also, you can also use, be it like for each activity, you can use after this. And after that, for each activity, inside that, you can use a copy activity. Or else, let me just tell you like this. You can use a for each. Okay, this is sequential. Suppose this activity gets failed, then what will happen? This activity will not execute, and inside this I might be having a copy activity, so that will not execute. Okay, so
Yeah.
this is in sequential case. So if you
Yes.
want it to happen in parallel, then you can just get metadata will actually be the first activity, or else if you want, you can also make use of your validation activity here. So if this is failed, right, if this is failed, you can give the control to something else like here, and then if you want, you can do the set activity also. Okay, after setting, you can also perform some other activities like get metadata or for each or whatever. Based on the requirement, you can also make use of it. Okay, so this is one way how wherein you can use the parallel and sequential.
So this set variable activity is used for only set the values, ma'am. Set the variables only,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Okay.
So, yeah. So basically, there might be cases wherein you want to set variables values at a particular stage. Okay, be it a dynamic value or static value. So at that time, you can make use of the set variable activity. Okay.
Okay.
So there is which will actually work. You know, here actually, let me just go to the pipeline variables. Okay, here I have not created a variable. If you see here, it will actually allow you these three formats. Okay, so we have another one also, which is a append variable also we have. So that basically append variable, right? It will work with arrays only. If you want to append variables one after the other, one after the other, suppose inside the get metadata activity you are getting different files and then you are giving it to a filter activity. After filtering, what are you doing? You are only filtering CSV related files. Okay, after that you can make use of your append variable, and here what will happen, whatever values, whatever file names you are getting, you can just create a variable called as file names variable, or else list of files variable you can create it, and you can just specify the type as array, and then you can just once you execute it and once you give it to the append variable, what will happen, whatever files are filtered, right, after that one after the other, one after the other, those particular values will be present inside your array. Okay. All right, so after that what else I have? Execute. Okay, web activity. Let me tell you this web activity, which is an important activity again. So when do you use this web activity actually? So web activity is something like directly you will be connecting to some URL. Okay, connect to URL and you will be able to fetch data from there. Connect to URL and fetch the data from that particular URL. So for testing purpose, there is one API available. Let me check that. What is that? Okay, yeah. So this is the actually this is there, right? Dummy REST API example.com. So this is a website wherein you will be able to get any normal for testing purposes. If you want to make use of any particular URL, you can make use of that URL inside your web activity. Okay. So what does this web activity actually mean? So there might be scenarios in your projects wherein you want to connect to a particular URL and you want to connect to that particular URL, and based on your requirement you want to either get the data from that URL or else post some information. Okay, post some information to that URL. So based on the requirement, if you want to do that, if you want to connect to a URL and act accordingly, then you will make use of your web activity. Okay, now I'll show you one example. So here you will find the all right. So here what all we have, I'll tell you. So inside this web activity, actually what do you have? You will have to give a URL. Okay, you will have to give a location, you will have to give a URL wherein you will be having the, you can go to that particular URL and get the content, whatever data is present, right? You can just go to that particular API and you can get it. After that, what do you have? You can choose the method. So what all are the different methods which you can use on that URL? You have get method, post method, put, delete. These are the different kinds of methods available. So if you want to retrieve the data, okay, get is something like synchronous. In synchronous cases, you will be using get. What is the synchronous again? Synchronous means you can fetch something and you can get the response in a single flow. Okay, if you just make use of this get option, you will be able to retrieve the data, you will be able to get the data actually. So using this post method, what will happen, you can just post the data to that particular URL. Okay, if you want to send any particular values, if you want to send to that URL, so based on the API method, right, you can make use of your get method, post method, and then different kinds of headers. So these are nothing but these are HTTP headers. Okay. So similarly, we have put method. If you want to just make use of this particular put method, and if you want to just post some information, if you want to delete something from that particular URL, you can also do that using this particular delete method. Okay.
For the post and put will be the
Yes.
same, right? In that case, ma'am.
So actually, there should be a little difference between this post and put method. Post and put. post here. If you see here, so here based on the API method you can just use it. So these are the different kinds of API methods which are available. So if you just see the difference between post and put method, what is it telling actually here? If you want to create a new record in the database, you are trying to post it. Okay, post is something like if you want to create which is not existing. Okay, for the first time if you want to post some information, you can make use of this post API method. If you want to update something which is already existing, then you can make use of your put method. Okay, delete method is obviously to delete any particular record, and get method will use when you want to retrieve the information. Okay, if you are having some employee data or some finance data or whatever data you might be having, so if you want to retrieve the data, you can make use of your get method. Okay, so now let
Yes.
me just try to take this particular example here. Let me take this one. And then what was the method which was present? It is post, right? Let me just use post method. And then in the body, whatever you want, you can just give it. Integration runtime, since we are trying to connect to public networks, you can make use of your auto resolve. If it is your on premise, you can just use self hosted, because you are trying to connect to a public network. I'm using that. Let me quickly. Okay. Post means you are just trying to send some value, right? You are trying to create something. So here if you want based on the data, right, you can just use something. I'm just passing some hard coded value here. Actually there will be a format in which you can actually use it. Okay, so that is why I'm getting error here. Too many requests now. Okay, let me use some other option here. Now this get method, right? So this particular URL is related to your employee related data, right? So now I will be getting in the format of employee related data. I'll be getting. Let us wait for some time. It will try to hit that URL. Too many requests. Maybe there are so many people who are using this particular feature, because when I've used it, it worked earlier. Issue with the URL itself. So that is why you're getting. Let me try with another URL. So once this is fine, right, you just try out with this activity. Okay, using this particular web activity, you can connect to any particular URL. So based on the API method you are using, if you are trying to use get method, what it will do, it will try to retrieve the data. The data will be displayed in the output. If you are trying to post the data, you will have to give the body inside the body. So if you want to send some employee ID, employee name, whatever, in some, there will be some format, whatever format that particular if you see here, this is following some JSON format. So in that format, if you just give that, right, so that data would be posted. Okay, that data would be sent to that particular URL. If you are trying to use this put method, what will happen? You are trying to update an existing record. Okay, if there is any particular record which is already existing, if there is any particular some employee ID is there, that particular person was working in there is something called as company name. So that company name, if you want to update, previously he was working in some XYZ company, now his company name needs to be updated. Then in that particular record, you can just send some value which will be updated. So when you use this put method, right, that particular record will be updated. So similarly delete, if you want to delete any specific ID or anything based on some condition, you can just specify that particular method. But now I don't know why, but it is not getting success. Okay, one thing was successful. Let me show you that output actually. So here, what was the thing which I have chosen? I have chosen get output with different URL. Okay, so here I had different URLs, right? So I have used one URL and one URL was successful. So if you see here, what was that I'm getting? I'm just trying to get, this is my post method. Okay, previously I've given that. So let me just give this one. Okay, so if you see here, this is the content actually which is present inside my employee. That particular URL will be having data, I've told you, right? If you want to retrieve that data, if you want to fetch that data, you basically use that get method. Okay, just specify the URL whatever you want to fetch, and then just use the method appropriately. Here I have chosen my get method. Okay, so if you see here, the status is successful because this is your HTTP wala request, right? So it will be in this format, like you will be having data, you will be having, and then message will be, you will be having. So till here, this is your data which is retrieved by your by that particular method and the URL. Okay, that URL is actually having these details. So that is why you are able to get these details only. Okay, so if it is having any employee related data, those will be displayed. So if you see here, this part is having my employee related data. Employee name is this one, employee salary, employee age, profile image. So these are the details which are present inside my employee data, and if you want to retrieve that data, just give that URL and give the method. What is the method here? If you want to retrieve, you should use get method. So if you want to post, you can just pass something like this. In the body, previously we have something called as a body also, right? Body field. Then you will have, there you will have to pass something like this. Okay, so inside that, if you want to post something, if you want to just post some value, you can just specify ID as to give the employee name, employee salary, age, and whatever you want, you can give it. And once you execute it, that data will be appended to your particular thing. So if it is appended or not, how you can say, you can just try to use some other URL, and that particular URL you can just use the method appropriately, which is the get method, and you can see if the particular thing has been appended or not. Okay, since this is a free dummy sample REST APIs which are available, you can just try to make use of this particular URLs which are available. Okay, just try with these possible options here. Clear? Is it fine? It's just that out of these three, out of these only one URL was working, and in that URL what information I have, out of these two only one was working. In that I just have some particular employee related, only one employee related information I have. So that is why I was able to get a single employee details. Okay,
Yes, ma'am.
okay, now just use that appropriately and just try to see the difference. There is space here. So what all you have debugged, if you want to monitor those, you can go back to your monitor tab. You have something called as debug. Here you will be able to see. Okay. So this triggered is there, right? So basically if you are using those three different types of triggers, so you can just make use of this triggered under this tab. You can just see what all are the triggered, which are automatically triggered. Okay. And those schedule, tumbling window, event based, right? Those are nothing but automatically executed pipeline. So once you schedule it, right, it will be available here, but manually if you run it, it will be available inside your debug. That is, if you are trying to debug it manually, right, those will be present here. So you can just see here, go here and then see what all are the different kinds of statuses are there. You can just see what is the output and all. Okay, so for this particular activity, how much time did it take, what is the DIUs in our, those things will be specified. All right. So this is fine. Let me just click on OK. That method itself, that particular URL itself is an issue. Too many requests again. Okay, leave it. So just try with one, okay? So for understanding purpose, if you are able to understand, just try with one of the URL which is present here. Just try and see what you are getting actually. Mm. All right. So after that, what do I want to do? I will tell you execute activity, execute pipeline. Okay, so what is this execute pipeline activity actually? So there might be cases in your particular pipeline. Execute pipeline, when can you use this execute pipeline? If you have n number of activities, suppose in a pipeline, if you have 20 different activities or many activities if you have, so for look and feel purpose, for GUI purpose also, if you do not want those many activities to be present in a pipeline, you can cut short those pipelines. Okay, in five activities you can put in one pipeline, and the other five activities you can put in one pipeline, and in the first execute pipeline you can just invoke that pipeline which is having five activities. In the second execute pipeline you can invoke, you can invoke another pipeline which is pipeline 2, which is having remaining five activities. Okay, let me show you that. Basically, to invoke pipeline, we will use this execute pipeline wala activity. Okay, so let me create. Okay, so already I have created two pipelines, right? So these are the two pipelines. So let me just try to invoke one pipeline. If you want to invoke another pipeline which you have created, you can just go to your settings tab. Here you have different pipelines which you have created. Okay, so you can just invoke another pipeline. So let me just make use of my web pipeline here, web activity I have used, right? So if I want to invoke that particular pipeline, what will happen? So here, right, so for this particular pipeline I can just create a trigger, be it a schedule trigger. So I am just trying to create a schedule trigger. So what happens initially, the control will come to this particular activity. So inside this activity, what do I have? I have something called as some other pipeline I have. So that particular pipeline will get opened. Okay, so inside this pipeline, what do I have? I have some other URL. Okay, so it will go to that particular URL and it will actually fetch me the data. After that is done, what will happen? It will go back. Okay, so since your web activity is done, it will go back. And after that, suppose inside your web activity, if you have some other activity, the activity you have, and before that you have some for each activity, and even before that you have some get metadata. Inside this I have copy. Okay, so initially what will happen using this execute activity, this activity, right? So initially you can just to trigger this particular activity. So once this is triggered, what will happen? Whatever pipeline you are trying to invoke, whatever pipeline you are trying to call, it will go to that particular pipeline. So inside that pipeline, what all are the different kinds of activities available, those will be executed. Okay. Initially this web activity will execute. So once this is successful, what will happen? So it will actually go to that particular web, whatever information is present, it will go to the URL, get the data. So once it gets the data, you are just giving it to some other activity. Once this is executed, it will go to this activity, it will return the data. Okay, so that is your execute pipeline. So using your execute pipeline, you can just you can invoke a specific pipeline. If you want to invoke one particular pipeline or any number of pipelines, you can invoke it using multiple execute pipelines. So that is the first one which I wanted to tell you. So here, right, let me just remove this get metadata here and for each here, and let me just create another pipeline, and let me call it as pl underscore 2. So here now I just have some get metadata. After that I have my for each, and inside that are somewhere I have some other activity. Okay, so this particular pipeline too, you want to call inside your this one. Okay, so how can you do that? You can just make use of your execute pipeline, give the control inside this execute pipeline, just give PL underscore 2. Okay, so now let me explain you the flow from the beginning. If you see here, I have, this is my first activity, this is my first pipeline, which is my main pipeline. So inside this main pipeline, I am trying to invoke another pipeline. Okay, so I'm trying to invoke another pipeline which is having something related to web activity. So it will fetch the data, it will return the output. So once the output is coming, what am I trying to do? I'm just trying to give the control to another activity, which is my execute pipeline. So inside this execute pipeline, what am I having? I'm having some other set of activities. Okay, so basically 230 FNM. No. So basically, if you want to make use of this particular execute pipeline, it will, what it will do, it will try to invoke as many number of activities you are given, those many number of pipelines if you want to invoke, and inside that pipelines if you have different kinds of activities. So basically, in order to achieve that, in order to execute it, you will make use of your execute pipeline. Okay. So using this, right? So if you see here, see how good this is looking, right? You only have two different activities here, but this activity internally, what is it doing? This activity is actually invoking some other pipeline which is containing different activities. Okay, so once this is done, what will happen? The output will be returned to here. And suppose if you have any other execute pipeline or any other set variable or something, that particular activity will get executed. So once this entire activity is done, what will happen? The output will be returned to your execute pipeline. So that means inside this particular activity, you will be able to display the output. Okay, the output will be displayed here. Okay, is it fine? Were you able to understand? Execute pipeline is basically used to invoke another pipeline. Inside that pipeline, you can have one activity, you can have 10 activities, how many activities you want, you can have it. Or else, even in the single one, if you see here, if you have here any number of activities you have, suppose you have 10 activities, and if you do not want those 10 activities to be present inside a single pipeline, then what can you do? You can just, suppose I have so many activities, I have one after the other, one after the other, I have so many activities. Okay. Mm. See here, I have these many number of activities, but I do not see, this is really confusing, right? So here there are only 4 or 5, that is fine. What if there are 10 or 20? It will be very confusing, right? If you want to, have a, if there is any activity which is broken, and if you want to execute that, it is actually a time taking thing, and it is a tedious also to look. So at that time, what you can do, you can just break the chain at one point. Okay, here, from here, this activity, after that. Okay, so here you can break the chain. Okay, you can break the chain here. Okay, so here, so till here it is fine. So if you have so many number of activities you have, you cannot just keep on scrolling to the right and checking what each and every activity is doing, because it will be confusing. So in order to avoid the confusion, you can also make use of your execute pipeline. So here what you can do, till here it is fine. So from here, right, these all activities you can assign it, you can create it in another pipeline. And here, instead of this, instead of giving the control here, right, you can just delete that control, and you can just make use of your execute pipeline. Okay, so inside this execute pipeline, you can just give the control from this wait activity to this execute pipeline. And then you can, inside this execute pipeline, you can just invoke all these activities. You can write, you can create a pipeline which is having all these activities. Okay, so by doing that, what will happen? You are actually, the look and feel of, see how good this particular pipeline is looking now, right? So it is very simple. So basically, we will be using this execute pipeline to invoke another pipeline. So that is one thing. Or else, if there are any number of activities inside your single pipeline, if you feel like there are so many activities, and if it is going, if you are able to scroll it right, so that is not a good way, right? So if you want to break the chain, you can break it, and at that point, you can just give it to an execute pipeline, and whatever activities you want, you can just use it inside your execute pipeline. Okay, let me know if you have any doubts, or else we can start tomorrow.